The Aasimar. There is a child in a village in the Western Heartlands who does not quite fit. It is not that anything is obviously wrong. The child is healthy, perhaps more than usually healthy. The child is beautiful, with the particular quality of beauty that makes adults look twice and then feel vaguely unsettled without being able to explain why. Something in the stillness, something in the quality of the eyes. The child heals faster than other children do when they fall and cut themselves. When the child is frightened or distressed, there is sometimes a faint luminescence, barely visible, like moonlight reflected off still water in a closed room where there is no moon and no window. The parents know, or they suspect. The knowledge has been in the bloodline for 3 generations, dormant, and now it has surfaced again in this particular child, and the parents are doing 2 things simultaneously, deciding how much to tell the child and deciding how much to tell anyone else. The Aasimar is born into this position, inheritor of something vast and magnificent and deeply personal, living in a world that does not have a standardized response to what they are. Some communities will revere them, some will fear them. Most will do both at once, which is harder to navigate than either on its own. The heavens have put something remarkable into the mortal world, and that something remarkable has to figure out how to be a person while also being a sign. This is what the Aasimar are, and what they have always been, the visible evidence of the celestial plane's ongoing investment in the mortal world, given flesh and a childhood and a finite lifespan, and the specific, complicated experience of being more than human in a context where most of the people around you are human and do not know quite what to do with the difference, like origin and the celestial bloodlines. The Aasimar does not begin with themselves. They begin with a moment, somewhere in the past, sometimes the distant past, generations back, sometimes recent enough that the Aasimar knows the story, when the boundary between the mortal world and the celestial planes became permeable in a specific and personal way. The mechanics of this are less romantic than the result. Celestial beings, devas, planetars, solars, coatls, and the other inhabitants of the upper planes occasionally make contact with the mortal world. Sometimes this contact is deliberate, a celestial sent on a divine mission who takes temporary mortal form, an angel walking among humans as a guide or protector or instrument of divine will. Sometimes it is the consequence of proximity, mortals who travel to the upper planes, or who are present during events of sufficient divine magnitude that the celestial energy itself leaves a mark. Sometimes it is stranger than either of these, a divine blessing that changes a bloodline without any direct physical encounter, a god's attention turned toward a particular family with enough intensity that something in their descendants carries that attention forward. What persists is not the celestial being itself, which is gone, returned to the upper planes, its mission complete or its temporary form dissolved. What persists is the change. The bloodline carries something forward that was not there before, a thread of celestial essence woven into ordinary human genetics. And this thread runs quiet through generations, sometimes many generations, sometimes only a few, before it surfaces in a particular individual with enough concentration to manifest as what the realms calls an Aasimar. The specific ancestor matters. Not always in ways the Aasimar themselves can identify or verify, but the nature of the celestial lineage shapes the Aasimar's physical expression and, often, their innate capabilities. The Aasimar descended from a planetar may carry a faint green luminescence to their skin, their heritage expressing itself in the verdant radiance associated with those great warrior angels. The Aasimar descended from an Avoral, the bird-like Gardinal celestials known for their freedom and keen sight, may have feathers mixed into their hair, an echo of the wings they do not themselves carry. Those with coatl lineage sometimes bear small iridescent scales. The solar descended may have topaz eyes that catch light in ways that human eyes do not. The Gala lineage Aasimar may have opalescent eyes with the faint shimmer of mother of pearl. These physical expressions are not chosen by the Aasimar. They are inheritance, as involuntary as any other inherited trait, and their relationship with them is the same ambivalent mixture that anyone has with the features they were born with, but would not necessarily have selected. The silver hair might be beautiful. The pupilless pale eyes might be unsettling to the people who look into them. both can be true simultaneously, and both will affect how the Aasimar moves through the world. In Mulhorand, the concentration of Aasimar bloodlines is higher than elsewhere in the realms, for reasons that are historical rather than random. When the mortal avatars of the Mulhorandi deities, actual divine beings incarnated in flesh, defeated the Amaskari and settled in the region, they did not immediately return to the divine planes. They lived among humans. They formed relationships with humans. The half-celestial children of those relationships became Mulhorand's first noble houses, and the dilution of that heritage through subsequent generations of marriage to pure-blooded humans produced Aasimar in greater numbers than most other parts of Faerûn produce. Many of these Aasimar eventually left Mulhorand, seeking destinies not defined by their divine grandparents, seeking places where their heritage was not already mapped and categorized by a society that had been managing it for centuries. They spread outward through the realms, carrying the bloodlines with them. Elsewhere, the origins are more isolated and individual. A family in Waterdeep with an ancestor who was blessed during the time of troubles, when the divine walked the mortal world. A line in the Silver Marches with a grandmother who traveled to the celestial planes and returned changed. A child born to a cleric of Lathander, whose devotion was so pure and so sustained that the deity's attention became something more than metaphorical. The mechanisms vary. The result, the child in the village who does not quite fit, is consistent, the body and the light. Most Aasimar look human. This is the first thing to understand about them physically, and the thing that makes their lives both easier and more complicated than they would be if the difference were immediately obvious. The typical Aasimar passes in a casual encounter as an unusually attractive human. There are physical tells, the quality of the eyes, the stillness, the specific luminescence that appears under certain conditions, but these tells can be missed, especially in the first moments of an encounter, especially by people who do not know what they are looking for. The Aasimar who chooses to conceal their heritage can often do so through careful attention to when and where they allow the celestial qualities to show, at least until something happens that removes the choice. The height tends toward the tall end of human variation. The beauty is consistent, not the fashionable beauty of a specific era or culture, but something more fundamental. The quality of physical presence that transcends the specific features and registers as attractive to observers across very different aesthetic frameworks. This beauty is not vanity and is not self-generated. It is the visible overflow of whatever the celestial heritage has done to the underlying physical form, and the Aasimar's relationship with it varies by individual, from something like gratitude to something like discomfort, to the specific frustration of being constantly assessed on the basis of a quality you did not choose and cannot fully control. The eyes are the most commonly noted tell. Pale, white, gray, golden, topaz, or opalescent, often without pupils in the human sense. They register differently in different light and are consistently described by people who know what they are seeing as the feature that makes the Aasimar's humanity feel slightly incomplete. Not in a monstrous sense, but in the sense that something looking back through those eyes extends further than the human face in front of you suggests. The silver hair that many Aasimar carry has a similar quality. It does not look dyed or artificially produced. It looks like what it is, a color that human genetics do not produce, expressing itself because the genetics at work are not entirely human. The luminescence is involuntary in its triggers and voluntary in its suppression with practice. Young Aasimar who do not yet have control over it will glow visibly when strongly emotional, which creates specific social challenges in communities where the heritage is not already known and accommodated. Older Aasimar typically develop sufficient control to suppress the luminescence when they choose to, and to deploy it intentionally when they want to. The ability to produce genuine light, not a glow, but actual illumination, is something most Aasimar can learn to use deliberately, and it has practical applications in the kinds of dark places that Aasimar often find themselves. The feathers that some Aasimar carry, not full wings, but the suggestion of where wings would be, feathers along the shoulders and upper back, are perhaps the most visually arresting physical expression of celestial heritage, and the Aasimar who has them does not get to forget their origin the way that a more subtly marked individual might occasionally manage to forget. Wings appear in the full sense only in specific circumstances for specific Aasimar types. The protector Aasimar who channels their celestial gifts most fully can manifest incorporeal wings briefly, and the effect is not subtle. The celestial patron. Many Aasimar have a guardian. This is not metaphor and it is not belief. It is a documented relationship between the Aasimar and a specific celestial being, usually a diva, who watches over them from the upper planes and communicates through visions, dreams, and the occasional moment of what the Aasimar experiences as sudden clarity or conviction. The relationship is not equal. The patron is an immortal celestial with access to information and perspective that the mortal Aasimar does not have. The Aasimar is a mortal being navigating a mortal life with mortal limitations. The communication that crosses between them is filtered through this asymmetry. The patron can advise, can point toward known evils, can grant a sense of purpose and direction, but cannot compel and cannot fully understand the specific texture of the mortal experience it is advising. The best patrons are the ones who have spent enough time in the mortal world to understand what they are asking their charges to do. The more distant ones, brilliant, good, and fundamentally operating on a different scale, sometimes send guidance that makes complete sense from the upper planes and creates profound practical difficulties for the Aasimar trying to implement it on the ground. The visions are the primary channel. The Aasimar may experience them as dreams with unusual vividness and narrative coherence, as moments of waking clarity, as the sudden knowledge that something is wrong in a place they have not been to and cannot see. The guidance tends toward the general rather than the specific, a sense that evil is present in a particular direction, a feeling of urgency about a person or location, the specific conviction that accompanies a choice the patron endorses. It does not typically include detailed tactical information or the answers to questions the Aasimar has not yet figured out how to ask. The patron is not omnipotent. They are monitoring from a great distance through the specific channel of their connection to their charge, and the things they know are the things they can see from that position, which is not everything. The Aasimar, who treats their patron's guidance as infallible and their visions as complete information, will eventually encounter a situation where the patron's advice was based on incomplete knowledge, and the consequences are the Aasimar's to manage. This is not the patron's failure so much as the structural limitation of what the relationship can provide. Not all Aasimar have active patrons. Some bloodlines have drifted far enough from their celestial origin that the thread connecting them to any specific guardian has faded or been severed. Some Aasimar have done things that led their patron to withdraw, which is a specific kind of spiritual isolation that the fallen Aasimar may experience as a silence where there used to be a voice. The Aasimar who has lost contact with their patron knows this absence precisely because they remember the presence. The three paths. In the 5th edition's framing, 3 broad expressions of Aasimar heritage are documented: the Protector, the Scourge, and the Fallen. These are not castes or choices, exactly. They describe the particular shape of the divine inheritance and the specific way it manifests in the individual. But they have real differences in capability and in the experience of carrying celestial blood. And understanding them is understanding something important about the range of what an Aasimar can be. The Protector Aasimar is the closest to what people expect when they hear the word celestial heritage. The divine energy they carry expresses itself outward in the wings that manifest briefly when they channel their gifts, in the radiant damage that accompanies their physical attacks when they reach into the light within them, in the specific quality of their presence that functions as protection simply by being there. They are born with a sense of mission, and the mission is defensive. They are here to stand between the vulnerable and whatever threatens them. This clarity of purpose is both the Protector's great strength and occasionally their limitation. The world is complicated, and the clear sense of duty that makes a Protector effective in a direct conflict can create real difficulties in situations where the right action is not to fight, but to think. The scourge Aasimar is the fiercer expression of the same inheritance, where the protector channels divine energy outward into protection and light. The scourge burns with it. The celestial fire in them is intense enough to damage the Aasimar themselves when they release it in its fullest form, as if the mortal body is not quite the right container for what it is holding. The aura they create when they unleash that energy damages everything nearby, including themselves, and this quality of barely contained divine intensity is the scourge's defining characteristic. They are effective, and they are sometimes destructive in ways they did not intend. And the experience of being this kind of Aasimar, always aware of the fire just below the surface, always managing the containment, is specific and not always comfortable. The fallen Aasimar is the most complicated and in many ways the most interesting of the three, because the fallen Aasimar represents what happens when the light turns. The celestial heritage is still present, the divine energy is still there. But something has happened, a choice, a corruption, the specific pressure of a world that treated a person with celestial heritage as a target rather than a champion, the gradual accumulation of experiences that eroded the faith that the heritage was supposed to express, and the radiance has shifted. The fallen Aasimar radiates necrotic energy rather than radiant light when they release their power, and this shift is visible in their appearance. Darkened features, shadowed eyes, the specific quality of beauty that has been altered into something more unsettling. Shar and Seth in particular are known to pursue the corruption of Aasimar, recognizing that the fallen celestial is a specific theological statement, and that the more Aasimar turn from their heritage, the more the darkness profits. The fallen Aasimar is not evil by necessity. This is important. They have made choices the patron did not endorse, or they have been shaped by experiences that push them away from the light, and the consequence is a different expression of the same inherited power. The question of whether the fallen Aasimar can return to the light, whether the corruption is permanent or whether the divine heritage persists beneath the darkness and can be reclaimed, is one of the more compelling questions that the Aasimar's specific condition raises. And the answer is, it depends, and the depending is the story. Life among others. The Aasimar lives among other people. This is not a choice exactly. There are not enough Aasimar in Faerûn at any given time to sustain an Aasimar community. A dedicated Aasimar culture, a city where being an Aasimar is unremarkable. They are rare, scattered, and defined by their relationships with the non-Aasimar people around them. This creates a specific social experience that most Aasimar share regardless of where they were born or what their specific celestial heritage is. They grow up in families that are mostly human. They attend schools or learn trades alongside children who are entirely human. They navigate communities whose understanding of what an Aasimar is ranges from sophisticated reverence in places like Multiverse to blank incomprehension in isolated settlements where the word Aasimar means nothing. The reverence is not always comfortable. To be treated as a divine messenger, as a living sign of the god's favor, as someone whose pronouncements carry theological weight, whether you want them to or not, is a specific burden that the young Aasimar who simply wants to have a childhood finds difficult to manage. The expectation of holiness is its own kind of pressure, and the Aasimar who falls short of it, who makes the ordinary mistakes of a young person learning to be a person, faces a specific double disappointment, their own experience of having failed and the community's experience of their champion's failure. The prejudice is different and more legible. In communities where the unusual is suspect, where difference is read as threat, where the specific luminescence and the pupilless eyes and the too still quality of the Aasimar's presence register as wrong rather than blessed. In these communities, the Aasimar's childhood is marked by the specific loneliness of being targeted for something they cannot remove or explain. The empathy that the celestial heritage tends to produce in Aasimar, their particular sensitivity to the emotional states of those around them, means that they feel the fear and the hostility directed at them with more acuity than a person without that sensitivity would. The Aasimar who turns fallen often turns because they encountered this, because the world responded to their celestial heritage with suspicion and cruelty rather than the welcome that the heritage seemed to promise, and the experience was too much to absorb without bitterness. The Aasimar who encounters another Aasimar describes it consistently as a specific quality of recognition, not necessarily warmth. Two Aasimar can have entirely incompatible personalities and conflicting goals, but the specific sense of being seen without having to explain, of being with another person for whom the experience of carrying this particular inheritance is not abstract or theoretical, but immediate and daily. This recognition generates an instinctive solidarity that crosses other divisions. An Aasimar is very likely to take the side of another Aasimar in a conflict without knowing much about the specific situation, which is both a genuine expression of community and an occasional source of poor decisions. The Deva connection. The Deva is the celestial most closely associated with the Aasimar's experience in the mortal world, not because all Aasimar descend from divas specifically, but because divas are the celestials most frequently sent to the material plane on extended missions, most likely to have formed the connections that produce celestial bloodlines, and most commonly assigned as the guardians who send visions to Aasimar, charges. The diva is a being of genuine power, not the full might of a solar or planeter, but formidable by any mortal standard, possessed of the ability to assume humanoid form and to operate in the mortal world for extended periods without the specific limitations that make other celestials' extended presence in real space difficult to sustain. They are the messengers and the agents, the ones who walk among humans when walking among humans is what the divine purpose requires. The Aasimar who receives guidance from a diva patron is receiving communication from a being that may have lived for thousands of years in both the upper planes and the mortal world, that has an accumulated understanding of how the material realm works that is both broader and more nuanced than any mortal could develop in a single lifetime. The Deva knows things. The Deva has seen empires rise and fall and has a perspective on what matters over the long term, genuinely valuable, if sometimes difficult to align with the immediate term concerns of the mortal trying to get through the current crisis. What the diva cannot do is fully inhabit the mortal experience. They have taken humanoid form before. They have functioned in mortal societies. But the underlying nature of what they are, immortal, fundamentally different from the beings they watch over, operating from a vantage point that encompasses more than any single mortal life, means there is always a gap between the guidance they provide and the context in which it must be applied. The Aasimar who learns to work with this gap rather than against it, who takes the patron's guidance as the valuable but incomplete information it is, rather than as either infallible instruction or irrelevant interference, is the Aasimar who gets the most out of the relationship. What the heavens want. The Aasimar exists because the celestial planes invest in the mortal world. This investment is not passive or incidental. It is deliberate, sustained across generations, maintained through the patron relationships and the guidance and the careful cultivation of bloodlines that carry divine potential into ordinary human populations. The reason is not complicated once you understand what the upper planes are concerned with. The Great Wheel of Planes is not static. The blood war between the demons of the abyss and the devils of the nine hells is real and ongoing, and its containment in the lower planes is maintained imperfectly. Chaotic evil seeps into the mortal world constantly, through the activities of demon cultists, through the corruption of powerful beings, through the ordinary operations of evil in a world that has always contained it. The celestial response to this is not only the direct intervention of angels and their ilk. It is the cultivation of mortal champions who can fight the battles that angels cannot easily fight without triggering the kind of planar involvement that the cosmic order requires to be avoided. The Aasimar is one expression of this. Not the only one. The paladin order, the cleric devoted to a good deity, the ordinary person who makes the right choice in a difficult moment, all of these serve the same broad purpose. But the Aasimar is specifically cultivated, specifically guided, specifically shaped from before their birth, to be someone who might make the difference in the mortal world's ongoing struggle with the forces that want to end it or corrupt it. This is a significant weight to put on a person. The Aasimar who fully understands their role in the divine economy is carrying something that most people do not. They are not simply individuals navigating a personal life. They are nodes in a cosmic strategy. The wins and losses of individual Aasimar lives are tallied somewhere in the upper planes as data in an ongoing project, and the Aasimar who declines to serve that project, who falls, or who simply wants to live their own life without the weight of divine mission, is making a choice that the heavens notice. Whether this is an obligation or an invitation depends entirely on the individual Aasimar's perspective and the range of perspectives on it. Among the scattered population of Aasimar in Faerûn at any given time is as wide as the range of human responses to being told that someone else has a plan for your life. Most Aasimar, encountering this weight gradually rather than all at once, reach an accommodation with it. The patron's guidance over years becomes less an imposition and more a resource. The sense of mission, which feels like a constraint when imposed from outside, becomes something more like a purpose when owned from within. The Aasimar who has genuinely chosen the celestial path, who has made peace with what they are and why they are that way and what the heavens are asking, is typically a formidable individual, capable and centered in a way that the Aasimar still fighting the weight of their heritage is not. The ones who never make that peace, or who made it and then had it broken by what the world did with their celestial nature, are the fallen, and their story is its own thing entirely. Between the Tiefling and the Aasimar, the comparison is irresistible, and everyone makes it. The Aasimar and the Tiefling are the symmetrical expressions of the same phenomenon, the mortal world touched by powers from the outer planes, one from the upper and one from the lower, one carrying the mark of something good and one carrying the mark of something terrible. The symmetry is real, and it is also incomplete in ways worth examining. The Tiefling's infernal heritage is rarely chosen by the individual who carries it. Neither is the Aasimar's celestial heritage. Both are born into a condition they did not select. Both navigate worlds that have complicated reactions to what they are. Both carry the cultural weight of what their ancestors did or were, whether or not those ancestors' choices have any bearing on the current individual's choices. But the social experience is not symmetric. The Tiefling is presumed guilty. The infernal mark reads, to most people who understand what it means, as evidence of corruption, as a sign that evil is somehow present or latent in the person bearing it. The Aasimar is presumed holy, which sounds better, and in many ways is better, but which has its own specific problems. The Tiefling who has to prove they are not their heritage faces one kind of challenge. The Aasimar who has to prove they are their heritage, who has to live up to the expectations the celestial mark generates, who has to be the champion the community expects rather than the complicated person they actually are, faces a different but genuine challenge. The Aasimar who has encountered prejudice, who has been feared rather than revered by communities that did not understand them, understands something about the Tiefling's experience that allows for a connection that the ideological distance between celestial and infernal heritage would not suggest. The best friendships between Aasimar and Tiefling tend to have this at their root. A mutual recognition of the specific experience of being defined by something you did not choose, in a world that cannot stop seeing the mark. The Fallen. The fallen Aasimar deserves more than a mention in the context of discussing what can go wrong. The fall is not sudden in most cases. It is gradual, a series of choices that move incrementally away from the celestial inheritance, each one small enough to feel manageable in the moment, accumulating into a direction that becomes clear only in retrospect. The Aasimar who responds to being targeted with a harshness that crosses the line. The one who lets the bitterness of being feared rather than welcomed become the organizing principle of their worldview. The one whose patron's guidance sent them away from the person they loved toward the greater good one too many times, and whose faith in the goodness of what they serve cracked under that weight. The one who was simply found by something dark at a vulnerable moment and heard an offer that sounded, in that moment, like what they needed. Shar is the deity most documented to seek the corruption of Aasimar specifically. The goddess of darkness and loss has a theological interest in extinguishing celestial light. Each fallen Aasimar is a statement, the darkness converting the light, and Shar pursues these conversions with the patient intentionality of a being who understands symbolic victories. Seth, the Yuan-Ti serpent god, has likewise been documented taking pleasure in turning Aasimar from the ways of their celestial forebears. The fallen Aasimar is not simply evil. This cannot be overstated. They are estranged from their celestial heritage, operating with the same inherited divine energy, but expressing it in ways the upper planes did not intend, carrying the visible mark of the fall in their altered appearance. They may be pursuing genuinely good goals through methods the patron cannot endorse. They may be working through grief or anger or the specific disillusionment of a person who believed in something and was let down by it. They may simply be tired of being what everyone needed them to be and have decided to be something else for a while, even if that something else is darker than it should be. The question the fallen Aasimar lives with, whether they acknowledge it or not, is whether the fall is a permanent condition or a direction that can be reversed. The celestial heritage is still there. The patron has withdrawn or the connection has frayed, but the underlying nature has not been destroyed. The light that has become necrotic was light first, and the transformation in one direction does not necessarily foreclose the transformation back. Whether it can be reversed depends on what caused the fall, what the individual is willing to do about it, and whether the divine investment in this particular bloodline has been patient enough to wait. The heavens are, in most cases, patient. They have been doing this for a long time. Aasimar in Faerûn. The Aasimar scattered across Faerûn at any given time are engaging with worlds that vary enormously in their knowledge of and reaction to what the Aasimar are. In Multiverse, where the bloodlines are older and more concentrated and the cultural framework for understanding divine heritage is better developed, an Aasimar is a known quantity, not unremarkable, but categorized and accommodated in ways that make life somewhat more navigable. In most other parts of the realms, the Aasimar is an anomaly, and the anomaly's reception depends on the specific cultural and religious context of wherever they find themselves. The Waterdavian noble family with an Aasimar child navigates the situation through a combination of careful management of who knows and how much they know, and the specific leverage that a child with obvious divine favor provides in the political negotiations that Waterdavian nobility perpetually engage in. The Aasimar is an asset in this context, but being an asset to your family's political position is a specific kind of use that the Aasimar with celestial empathy will notice and feel. The Aasimar born to a farming community in the Heartlands may never encounter another Aasimar, may never speak to anyone who has met one, and may spend their childhood navigating the village's uncomfortable mixture of reverence and unease, with no framework beyond what the local priest can offer, which may be more or less accurate depending on the priest's theological education. The isolation is real. The lack of reference of anyone who has been through this before, anyone who understands from experience rather than doctrine what it is to carry this, is one of the specific hardships of Aasimar existence in most of Faerûn. The adventuring path is overrepresented among Aasimar compared to the general population, and the reasons are structural rather than simply temperamental. The adventurer's life takes you away from the fixed community where your difference makes you an object of complicated attention. It places you in situations where the celestial gifts are directly useful rather than simply unusual. It gives you access to the divine patron's guidance in a context where that guidance translates directly into practical action. And it surrounds you, often, with the specific kind of people who are used to the unusual and who evaluate their companions on performance rather than on conformity to a baseline that the Aasimar was never going to meet anyway. The Aasimar who finds a company of adventurers who accept them for what they are without the weight of expectation or the anxiety of what they represent. This is often the first experience the Aasimar has of simply being a person among people, rather than a sign among humans. The friendships formed in these contexts tend to be the Aasimar's most genuine ones, formed on the basis of shared experience rather than inherited significance. And somewhere in a village in the Western Heartlands, the child who does not quite fit is growing up. The parents are deciding what to tell them, and when, and how much. The patron is watching from a very long way away, patient, waiting for the moment when the child is ready for the first vision. The light is in there. It always was. It is simply waiting for the right moment to show itself. The weight of heritage. Every Aasimar eventually has to decide what to do with what they are. This is not the decision it appears to be from outside. The Aasimar who simply accepts their celestial heritage and becomes the champion the heavens intended is not taking the easy path. That path requires a sustained commitment to a standard that is genuinely difficult to maintain, in a world that provides constant reasons to lower it. The Aasimar who rejects their heritage and attempts to live as an ordinary person is not taking the easy path either. The heritage does not go away because you refuse to engage with it, and the patron continues sending guidance that the Aasimar who refuses to listen can feel as an intrusive presence rather than a resource. The fallen Aasimar who has made a choice the patron cannot endorse is not on an easy path in any sense. What they are all navigating is a version of the same fundamental situation. They were born carrying something that most people do not carry, and the question of what to do with it is not answered by the fact of being born with it. The Aasimar who has made the most functional peace with their heritage are usually the ones who have found a way to hold it as theirs, not as an external imposition, not as a burden given to them by forces they did not choose, but as something that belongs to them specifically and that they have decided to do something with. The celestial lineage is not a cage and it is not a crown, it is a capability and a connection and a history. And what the Aasimar makes of it is their own business, whatever the patron might prefer. The patron can advise, the patron can withdraw. What the patron cannot do is live the Aasimar's life for them. And the Aasimar who understands this, who accepts both the value of the guidance and the limits of the relationship, who takes what the heavens offer and makes their own decisions with it, is the one who manages to be genuinely themselves rather than simply the celestial investment made flesh. The place in the cosmos the great wheel of planes turns. The blood war continues in the depths of the lower planes, demons and devils consuming each other in a conflict that the upper planes sustain through containment rather than direct intervention. The mortal world sits at the center of this, touched by both and properly belonging to neither, generating the souls that feed the outer planes and making the choices that determine which direction the cosmic balance tilts. The Aasimar's place in this cosmology is specific. They are not angels. They are mortal, bounded by time and the frailties of a human body, able to die in ways that celestials cannot. They are not simply humans. The celestial inheritance in them is real, and its effects on their capabilities and their nature and their relationship with the divine are genuine. They are the middle ground, mortal enough to live in the mortal world, divine enough to make a difference in it that a purely mortal person could not. The gods of good alignment invest in Aasimar bloodlines because Aasimar can go places and do things that divine beings cannot, without triggering the kind of direct planar involvement that the cosmic order works to prevent. A solar descending directly from Mount Celestia to deal with a chaos cult in a city would be a significant cosmic event with consequences that would ripple outward. An Aasimar descending from their apartment to deal with the same cult is a person doing their job. The Aasimar is the plausibly deniable, specifically calibrated, deeply personal investment of the heavens in the mortal world's affairs. This positioning is not secret in the sense of being hidden from anyone who looks. The Aasimar knows what they are. The inquisitors of divine law who study such things know what the Aasimar represents. The demons and devils who encounter Aasimar in the field know very well what they are fighting. The positioning is secret, only in the sense that it is not the first thing visible, that the ordinary person in the market who passes an attractively still individual with silver hair and pale eyes does not think the celestial planes have invested strategically in this person. They think that person is unusually beautiful and a little unsettling, and move on. The Aasimar who understands their place in the cosmos and has chosen to inhabit it fully is a significant force. Capable in the direct sense, the celestial gifts are real capabilities with real applications. and capable in the more diffuse sense of embodying something that has an effect on the people around them. The presence of an Aasimar who has embraced their heritage changes the quality of the space they occupy. People make better choices. Fear is a little more manageable. The darkness presses a little less hard. This is not magic in the technical sense. It is the specific consequence of having a light in the room. The healing hands. The most immediate practical gift the Aasimar carries is the capacity to heal, not as a learned skill, not as a magical system requiring training and components, but as a direct expression of the celestial energy in them. The touch that restores, that closes wounds and knits damage, that takes from the Aasimar's own reserves and gives it to whoever needs it. This gift is not inexhaustible. It depletes and requires rest to restore. The Aasimar who uses it freely, who gives it whenever it is needed without attention to their own reserves, will eventually be empty in a situation where the need is greatest. Learning to manage this, to give generously without giving recklessly, to understand the difference between the moment that requires everything and the moment that requires something more measured, is part of the practical education of living as an Aasimar. The capacity for divine magic in general is something many Aasimar discover in themselves over time. The connection to the celestial planes that the heritage maintains tends to make divine magic more accessible than arcane magic. The Aasimar reaches toward clerical or paladin traditions naturally, finding that the divine channels are already partially open in them in ways that the arcane channels are not. The Aasimar wizard exists and is not unknown, but the more common path is the Aasimar whose first experience of channeling divine energy confirms a connection they could feel but not previously express. The paladin path in particular resonates with the Aasimar's experience in specific ways. The paladin's structure, the oath, the divine sanction, the specific commitment to a course of action that the oath represents, mirrors the Aasimar's relationship with their celestial patron's guidance. Both involve submitting yourself to a standard that is larger than your immediate preferences and finding, paradoxically, that the submission enables rather than constrains. The Aasimar who becomes a paladin is often the one who has taken their relationship with the patron most seriously, who has made the implicit obligation of their heritage explicit in the most concrete way available. The clerical path is more varied in what it means for the Aasimar, because the specific deity matters enormously. The Aasimar drawn to Lathander, the god of the morning and new beginnings, is expressing something different from the one drawn to Tyr, the god of justice, or Ilmater, the god of endurance, but the common thread is the divine connection. The Aasimar who takes the clerical path is formalizing and deepening the connection to divine power that their heritage has always provided in its informal way. The long question. The Aasimar lives a little longer than a human. Most reach somewhere between 100 and 160 years if they survive what those years contain, and what those years contain is often considerable. The patron watching from the upper planes has watched the bloodline produce many individuals over many generations. The specific Aasimar currently receiving guidance is not the first such charge and will not be the last, and the patron's relationship with any individual Aasimar is, from the patron's perspective, one chapter in a very long story. From the Aasimar's perspective, it is the whole story. This asymmetry matters. The patron's equanimity about the individual Aasimar's struggles, including the equanimity about their death when death comes, is a genuine expression of the celestial perspective on mortal life. Not cold, exactly, but calibrated to a timescale that makes individual mortal lifetimes into the chapters of a much longer narrative. The Aasimar who has lost someone, who is dealing with grief that feels total and permanent, who receives from their patron guidance that acknowledges the loss and then redirects toward the next thing that needs to be done. This Aasimar is not receiving cruelty. And they are receiving guidance calibrated to a timescale they do not share, and the gap between those timescales is real and is painful. The Aasimar who has made peace with this, who has found a way to hold both the mortal significance of their individual life and the celestial perspective that places it in a longer arc, is the one who gets the most complete picture. They can care about the specific people in front of them with the full emotional engagement that mortality makes possible, And they can also carry the sense of a longer purpose that gives meaning to that engagement, even when the immediate outcomes are bad. This is not easy. Nothing about being an Aasimar is easy, which is perhaps the most honest summary of their experience available. It is significant. The light they carry is real. The difference they make is real. The child in the village who does not quite fit, who looks up sometimes with those pale, still eyes and sees something in the middle distance that no one else can see, that child is going to do something with what they are. The heavens are patient. They are betting on it. The experience of difference. Spend enough time with Aasimar accounts, the memoirs that a few have written, the correspondence preserved in temple archives, the oral histories maintained by the clerical orders that work with planetouched populations, and a pattern emerges that is consistent across very different backgrounds and very different expressions of the heritage. They all describe a childhood moment when they understood clearly and without comfort that they were not going to be ordinary. Not a bad thing, necessarily. Not a good thing, necessarily. A fact, a permanent fact that was going to shape everything else about their life that they had not chosen and could not undo, and that the people around them were going to have to decide what to do with. The adult Aasimar who looks back on that moment from the vantage of a life spent working out what their heritage means describes it differently depending on how that working out has gone. The one who found their way to the celestial purpose and found it meaningful describes the moment with something like gratitude. The recognition that came early, however uncomfortable, of what they were going to have to become. The fallen Aasimar who ended up somewhere the patron did not intend describes the same moment with something more like grief. The first understanding that they were marked for something, and how far from that something they have since traveled. What they all describe with the same directness, regardless of the outcome, is the aloneness of it. Not loneliness, exactly. Most Aasimar have people around them, relationships and communities, and the ordinary texture of a mortal social life. But the specific aloneness of carrying something that the people around you do not carry, that you cannot fully share or fully explain, that you are working out in real time without a model who has done it before you and succeeded in a way that looks achievable. The patron helps. The patron's guidance is the closest thing most Aasimar have to a model. A voice from the upper planes that has seen this before, that has watched other Aasimar navigate this territory, that can offer perspective if not instruction. But the patron is not a peer. The patron is speaking from a position of immortality and celestial certainty to a person who is neither. And the gap between those positions, however benevolent the patron's intentions, is real. The other Aasimar helps more when they can be found. The instant recognition, the shared vocabulary, the specific relief of being with someone who knows from the inside what it is to have this particular quality of light in them, who has experienced the luminescence and the eyes and the visions and the pressure of expectation without needing it explained. This is why on the rare occasions when two Aasimar meet, the pull toward solidarity is so strong. It is not simply that they share a category, it is that they share an experience that no one else in the room shares. What the realms makes of them. Faerûn's response to the Aasimar is as varied as Faerûn itself, and the variation is instructive. In communities with strong divine traditions, the major temples of lawful good deities, the sanctified cities of the Silver Marches, the Mulhorandi aristocracy with its deep familiarity with divine heritage, the Aasimar is accommodated with a sophistication that is genuinely useful. The tradition has frameworks for what the Aasimar is and what they need and how to support them without consuming them. The Aasimar born into these contexts has resources that the Aasimar born into a fishing village does not, and the difference in outcomes is real. In communities with fear-based responses to the unusual, and these are not rare in Faerûn, where the unusual has often had very good reasons to be feared, the Aasimar's childhood is more difficult. The celestial mark reads as different, and different in these communities reads as dangerous, and the specific way in which the Aasimar is dangerous is not the way the fear imagines, but that does not make the fear comfortable to live with. The Aasimar who grows up under this kind of pressure develops specific adaptations, the ability to suppress the luminescence, the habit of keeping the eyes downcast in initial encounters, the careful management of when and how much celestial heritage is allowed to show. The noble families of most major cities have a sophisticated response to Aasimar that is cynical in a way that is not entirely comfortable to examine. The divine heritage is useful in diplomatic contexts, in religious negotiations, as a claim of divine favor that opponents cannot easily counter. The Aasimar child born into a noble family is, in this framework, an asset, and the family's management of the heritage is oriented toward maximizing that asset's utility rather than necessarily toward the Aasimar's own flourishing. The Aasimar who grows up as a family asset sometimes becomes a genuinely great person anyway. Sometimes they become something more complicated. The Inquisition-style institutions within divine orders, the agents who hunt undead, who track fiendish corruption, who pursue heresy against the lawful good order, tend to have a very clear and useful relationship with Aasimar. The celestial heritage is visible to them as exactly what it is. The divine gifts are practically applicable in the work they are doing, and the moral alignment that the heritage predisposes toward meshes well with the institutional mandate. The Aasimar who joins such an organization often finds it the first context in which being what they are is an ordinary fact, rather than a complicated situation to be managed. The adventuring company, as noted earlier, is the most consistent positive context Faerûn offers the Aasimar. People who have decided to spend their lives in situations that most people avoid tend not to be thrown by difference. The Aasimar who is part of a functioning company of adventurers is simply the member who heals a little differently and whose eyes glow sometimes and who occasionally knows things they should not know. And this is accepted alongside whatever specific capabilities and quirks every other member of the company brings. In the end, the Aasimar exists at the intersection of the divine and the mortal, carrying something of each and fully belonging to neither. The heavens have invested in them. The mortal world has to accommodate them. They themselves have to figure out what to do with both of those facts in the specific life they were given, with the specific people around them, on the timeline available to them. The inheritance is real, the luminescence is real. The patron watching from the upper planes is real and patient and invested in this particular bloodline's contribution to the ongoing project of keeping the mortal world from being consumed by the darkness that presses against it from every direction. The person inside the inheritance is also real. The childhood confusion and the adult choices and the specific texture of this particular Aasimar's experience, all of it real, all of it mattering, all of it constituting a life that belongs to them, regardless of what the heavens intended when they arranged the bloodline's expression in this particular body at this particular moment. What they make of it is the story. The light was already there. The story is what they do with it.